Peace. What's good? How y'all doing? Today is Sunday, February 22nd, 2026. I pray this message reaches you all in the best of health, spirit, and mind. It is good to be with you this beautiful Sunday evening. It was a beautiful day in LA today, and I had a wonderful meeting earlier today. My first meeting, introductory meeting with my crew from the Climbing the Ladder of Yourself 120 day program that we just launched today and will officially launch with our first meeting on Sunday, March 8th. So shout out to the beautiful people that joined me today. We had the most wonderful and inspiring and empowering conversation. And it's a pleasure for me to get to know you guys. And so I'm looking forward to our next meeting. If you are interested in signing up for the Climbing the Ladder of Yourself group workshop, which is all based around climbing the ladder of yourself, which is pretty much what we're going to talk about today, and a few footnotes that I wanted to share from that experience today. But just even being intentional about growing and expanding and being better and doing better and being mindful of our energetic footprint and how we're moving out into the world, which is some of what we talked about today. And so the link will be in the description if you would like to join us for the next meeting and for the next 4 months. Because at the core of everything that I'm going to say in this video, and everything that I know to be true from my personal life experience and what I know of humanity, is at the root of it all, we are all seeking love. And even the ones who have kind of turned that valve off, right? Like, dog eat dog type vibes, trust no one, all the things, right? The hardening of the heart, the darkening of the heart, if you will. And sort of being to the point where a lot of people in the world are operating in a very neutral space. Let me bring myself up real quick. I wanted you guys to. I have this video, this sacred geometry video, which is like a whole vibe to me. So I wanted to share that with you guys. But I also it had inadvertently pulled myself up in a black and white um, photo as I was getting ready for this video, and I liked the vibe and I liked the look. And the plan was just to share the sacred geometry video with you guys, but instead of doing just that, I can also represent here in black and white as I'm sitting in my dining area with my sweatshirt on and having had a really good day today, and just in a good space, in a good clear space. And I again got a download from the conversation that we had earlier and wanted to share a few things with you guys, as well as some stuff I've been paying attention to in the news. So it looks like there's a delay from when I'm talking versus when the video is, like my words are not in sync with my sound as I'm looking at myself. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take this other. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, right? Since we have had the sacred geometry experience, and I'm going to take this page down so I can get a better quality video of myself, hopefully. Let's see here. Okay, so there we go. So that should be better. So yeah, I said, why don't I just go black and white and do the old Hollywood type vibes? Even though again, my hair is slicked back. I did yoga a little bit earlier, and yeah, I've been working and all of the things. And so I felt like I'm in a good space to sit and have this conversation with you guys. And the topic, the stakes are high. I'm going to try to touch on that in multiple ways. Um, I might even have to do another video to kind of round this conversation out, because I always feel responsible. Knowing what's really kind of going on in the world, and like the bigger picture in the background, the bigger picture spiritually, but then also the bigger picture in terms of what the powers that used to be are currently unraveling right in front of our eyes, and then right behind the scenes as well. Knowing that, and then watching and observing the mindset and the condition of the masses, which is all our neighbors, our global neighbors, right? My neighbors here in LA, I have to be more cognizant of the consciousness here in LA, just like if you were in Brooklyn or if you were in Orlando or if you were in Spain, right? You have to be mindful and conscious of the consciousness of the people around you. That's one of the ways of situational awareness, being conscious of situational awareness, right? And so when I say the stakes are high, I mean the stakes in terms of how you're treating yourself, in terms of whether or not you really truly value yourself. If you are living and operating in fear and in scarcity consciousness, and that is can mostly we think of financially, obviously that goes without saying, but then also just in terms of self-esteem and in terms of how we show up in the world and our expectations of life. That's why I've been talking about our relationship with the world, because so much of, even when you think about the concept of racism, I think I wrote this in my notes somewhere. um, the concept of racism and how oh, this is something that Neville Goddard said in a video I was watching today, and I wrote it down. He said, a lot of us are walking around feeling threatened by life, right? And I'm listening to this after we did the Climbing the Ladder of Yourself meeting earlier. And so that was kind of like an undertone in some of the stuff that we talked about. So when he said it, of course, a light went off in my head. And so I came and wrote it down real quick. And I also wrote, for Black people in America in particular, we have it embedded in our consciousness that the world is working against us. That doesn't mean the world isn't working. Excuse me. That doesn't mean the world isn't working against us. That's not to try to deny, right, the reality of being Black in America or the darker skinned Indigenous, Native, African people around the world, right, and the extreme levels of dignity excuse me, I was going to say dignity, the extreme levels of oppression and abuse that these cultures have had to experience over time and are still experiencing to this day. On a spiritual level, right? When we are expecting racism in the places that we frequent, expecting racism in the job because they've proven it or not, it's just a ripple effect affecting on a universal level, because it magnifies whatever it is that we are bracing for or preparing for, or and it's terrible when it's working against you, this universal law, but it's the best thing ever when it's working to your benefit, right? Because when things are going good and the momentum is already swinging in that direction, and then you get that extra universal push, right? Because that's where your energy and attention is directed. And so it's the best thing ever because now you want on a wave, right? But when it's working in the other direction, which is the laws of polarity, right? And it's mandatory for it to be even kill in terms of which direction it can go, and which direction is based on how prone we are to choosing the higher self over the lower nature in everything, in our relationships, in our conversations with ourselves. I was saying earlier, we had one of the members today was talking about this sort of repetitive thing that she does in her mind that she didn't realize, and that she caught herself doing it in the middle of us having this conversation, because the conversation was about mindfulness and like really stepping outside of yourself and observing your thinking. And so in this timeline now, where everything is distractive, there's so much content, there's much information, there's so many perspectives, there's so much ping pong consciousness. We have to be very intentional about controlling the input, and the input being, what's really happening in the news, what's happening, things that might not necessarily, things that could upset us, things that provoke fear, things that, put us in that trauma bonding space. We just have to be very careful about My camera just went off. Okay, that was weird. Um, Trauma bonding and all of the things, right? So the stakes are high. So let me pull this back in. And again, if you're tuning in, I have the link in the description to sign up for my Climbing the Ladder of Yourself. It's a 120-day program. We meet once a month and we set up individual and group exercises for everyone that is participating to do on their off time, and then we come together and communicate and have a meeting of the mind and hold one another accountable. And it's just a really good experience and space, because I know a lot of us, especially who are like trying to get to the next level of ourselves or trying to be in this world and not of this world. A lot of us are kind of struggling to find our balance and to find our momentum right now, myself included. And so this is one of those collective experiences that I've put together for us to do just that. And I know how important it is for me to bounce all of the stuff that I have going on in my mind and sometimes in my heart to somebody. And having had times where I did not have that, right? And so I had to like process and figure it out on my own a lot of times. And so I want to make sure that we do have spaces and communication where we can come together and bounce these things off each other, but also hold one another accountable. So all of the conversation, all the energy, all the vibration is about climbing the ladder of yourself. And even this subject for this video, the stakes are high, is a compliment to climbing the ladder of yourself, because we're all the people of God, quote unquote. And when I say the people of God, I'm talking about the righteous ones, not like holy or religious, but like really living in a righteous, good human, striving for the light, striving to be a good steward of the earth, if you will. Those among us who are still able to maintain some goodness within us in spite of being in the midst of this chaos. And I'll say to another extent, like ready to accept the challenge of what these times are requiring and demanding of us, because it's a lot, right? Um, we have to really, and the caveat is that we're so used to the work being in the gym, right, at the job, pounding the pavement, get it how you live, right, like all of the hustle mentality, the right. But a lot of people are running into a brick wall right now because that hustle mentality has exhausted them, not just because of the physical efforts, but because we're in a spiritual war, and the mind and the consciousness and the psychology is under serious attack, and the emotional body and emotional well-being is under consistent attack, and the spiritual body and the physical body and the auric field, which is the spiritual body and the spiritual sense of self, is under attack consistently. And so how do you maintaining your balance in 2018 was a totally different conversation than it is in 2026. Let me just give you a bird's eye view of some of the things that I was looking into today in the news, just based off some conversations that I had over the weekend. The first is the situation in Cuba. There is a total oil blockade happening in Cuba right now, and it's been in effect, I think, for like 2 weeks now. And so the Trump administration has basically banned and stopped oil from going from Venezuela to Cuba, and so now it's causing all kinds of catastrophe and issues and food problems, right, in areas that were already impoverished or desolate. And so, but like, it's a big situation what's happening there, right? Another highly melanated, uh, uh, you know, intentionally sovereign nation, and I can't say that for right now, but I can say what I know what Cuba stood for and has stood for a long time, right? So obviously, the continuation of that nation being under attack in one way or another is just another reflection of that. So that part right there, right, which isn't even really being talked about in the mainstream. And then this new Fed Now law that's moving into effect, law or bill, I'm not sure which language I should use, but moving into effect in July, which is basically supposed to be a federally owned and run and operated uh, payment system that is going to take the place of all of the other payment systems that we normally use. So in the video I saw, and mind you, I have to really go back and do the knowledge to this. I know it's true because I reported on this last year in my headline news episodes. So I know it's true, but I haven't like gone back and read up to date. Right now, this is exactly where it's at. I did a little basic research before I started this video, but in the video, the guy was saying that he said Zelle. Um, PayPal, Venmo, um, and a couple of others. He didn't say Cash App, so I don't know if that was intentional or not, but he said several other payment systems, and he was just like, now we're going to have to go through the banking system in order to, if you make a payment to buy groceries, Instacart was the example that he gave. And so instead of you paying Instacart directly, you will pay your money to this Fed Now system, which will then pay the money to the third party, which makes absolutely no sense. But this is just like a prerequisite for some other things that they have planned, which I don't want to get too in depth with that because I'm trying to keep a certain energy and frequency in this conversation. But that's another thing. Just looking at the scope of what I've been kind of paying attention to just today, they had a warning, or not a warning, but a strong notice that was posted online, and I shared it because it was true at the time, that the TSA, due to a government shutdown, had now paused all pre-checks, and that this was going to have a global effect, and that people who are traveling into or out of the United States are going to be experiencing extreme delays, that they are sort of tightening the grip on who they allow and how they allow, and the whole process, and due to the government shutdown, etc. And then a couple of hours later, I saw reports that they had basically rolled it back, that they said, again, I didn't go and do the knowledge to that, but I did confirm that this was something that they said was going to happen, and then they pulled it back, and then it didn't actually happen, right? And so a lot of times we think that, they did that because of the backlash. Well, the total timeline of this story, from what I saw, was like 12 hours. It's not something that's been like matriculating over the last couple of days. Just kind of happened as a result of the shutdown. But a lot of times they do these type of things just to drop a seed and plant a seed in the subconscious mind. And so, if it happens again, people are kind of lax about it because it's like, oh yeah, remember that happened last month. Last month they said it was going to happen and it didn't happen, and they've done that in so many ways. It's kind of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, throw a rock and hide your hand type thing that they do, so that if and when they are successful in what they're planning, that people aren't even going to have the mental, not even have the self-awareness and the situational awareness to do anything about it. And so in us having these conversations, you say, well, what can we do about it? For me, I think we really need to start spending cash. I think we need to start keeping cash. I think we need to start spending cash. I think we need to stop supporting businesses that do not accept cash, and tell them, when I'm in LA, because it's a pretty good amount of businesses out here that don't take cash anymore. So when I go into a business, sometimes I do it and I know they don't accept cash. I'll pretend like I didn't see the sign on the door, and I order something, and then they'll tell me what the price is or whatever, and I'm like, oh, you don't take cash? Oh, that's unfortunate. I don't support businesses that don't accept cash anymore. Hopefully, you guys will reconsider that policy, because we don't even have to. Did you think about, you got a $20 bill? I had $100 bill today. Well, not I had $100 in 20s and some ones or whatever, but like, in the distribution of the money as I'm moving throughout the day, and just not having to scan, not having Wi-Fi, not having to have a signal to tap, not having to, make sure that funds are in this account versus that. I mean, all the stuff that comes with thinking about money on a digital level, and then the fees, because you're paying fees. Listen, that's why now when I'm running sales, I'm running them through my Cash App, because when I sat down and really did an audit on how much money I was spending on fees between, it's like when you have a store and you have a payment processing system and then you have your bank, there's like three people that you're paying in that whole process, right? And so, yeah, it's the house never loses, right? But if I'm going to the store and I got a $20 bill in my pocket and I spend 13.75, and he gives me back what's that 6.75, we don't. There's nothing else to talk about. So you say, well, what can we do? Spend cash. Be intentional about spending cash. I think this is something that we really, 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 really need to do right now. And then in terms of like the real ID, the digital ID situation, because that's like looming, right? This is it's looming in the background of everything. That's why the situation with the TSA shutdown and whatnot. Like I think they kind of they'll drop something on you and pretend and then see how people are going to react, monitor the algorithm online and see what people are saying, right? And then kind of take it back and be like, oh yeah, we thought about it, and we're not gonna move forward with that. And that might be something to consider if this wasn't a part of the bigger plan. And the bigger plan being to limit the movement of humanity on our planet, to limit our ability to move around on our planet if we're not in compliance. And so, what's the answer to the equation? Not being in compliance. And this is multiple levels. We think it's just about like saying no to that ID, right? Or those IDs, and how that whole process is escalating. You can't move, you can't travel if you don't have this, right? You can't fly if you don't have this. Like how did these people become our gods? Yesterday I could use my regular driver's license and it would tell you everything you needed to know, and it was verified and it had to be up to date and it had to be all of the things. And that's been a perfect way of us communicating and having an understanding since forever. Now all of a sudden I need to get another type of exact prototype of a different type, and if I don't have that then I can't move around. And it's just like, and the average person is just like, okay, so what, it's not a big deal. But there's more to the story than just that. So another thing that came up in the meeting today was locking in, or lock in, or it's time to lock in, right? And that's a multi-layered thing, locking in, right? Because I think we can all think, okay, I'm gonna lock in and get in the gym, right? I'm gonna work out 3 or 4 times a week, or whatever. We can think of locking in terms of that, right? We can think of locking in terms of like, let's say you got a job and you work every day, and you kind of been half-assing it. You haven't put your best foot forward because your boss is an asshole, or because of dot dot dot, right? And so you say, you know what, I'm gonna lock in. I'm gonna go in this job. It might not be the best case scenario right now, but this is feeding my family. This is getting my bills paid. This is a step in the right direction towards me getting to the next level of myself. I'm gonna lock in and put my best foot forward in this job. Everybody can understand and relate to that. And hopefully everybody has experienced that at some point. We should be, if, like the book Russell Simmons, Do You. I remember he was giving the example of the guy who was outside. He was a homeless dude that used to offer to sweep the sidewalk outside of a bodega somewhere in New York, right? And so finally, he was kind of like begging the store owner, and he was like, "No, because I can't pay you." Da 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 da. And so basically, he ended up pestering this dude enough to where he let him sweep the sidewalk. Mind you, he wasn't paying him initially. It was just to do it to keep the sidewalk clean, whatever. And so he was so meticulous about how he swept that sidewalk and that area, that eventually the owner had to step in and offer him an ongoing position, right? And we ain't talking life-changing money, but still, the point is, because then that blossomed into other opportunities for him. But the point is, going back to the point about the job that might not be perfect or might be this or might be that, if you want to find a better job, you have to create the frequency in yourself and in your electromagnetic field in the job that you're in right now to attract it. And this is the science that the alchemists of the world, or the truth seekers, or the bearers of light, or however we want to contextualize it, 144,000, I'm okay with it all, right? But this is the alchemy that we are being forced to understand and to figure out and to learn how to master right now. Because again, I don't foresee anybody being able to stop me from moving around my planet when it's time for me to move around my planet. It's not time yet. I have specific work that I have to do in a specific place, and I know it for sure now, because when I wanted to leave the most, I could not, God clipped my wings and told me to sit down and then forced me to sit down, right? And so that's, eventually you have to surrender to the wisdom of your own life and like the way things unfold. A lot of us are battling the timeline and battling the lessons and battling the experiences instead of just surrendering to the process. And yes, that's easier said than done. Right. Another reason why I'm doing these, doing my one-on-one consultations or doing these group workshops is because, man, I had moments where like I really, really, really needed to talk to somebody. And, of course, there's plenty of people I can call, but sometimes you're in a space where your soul needs something in particular that you don't really even know if it's possible for somebody else to give it to you, right? And a lot of times it's just needing to be heard, needing to know that this space that you're in matters, that the difficulty or the suffering or the struggle or whatever the things are, it actually matters, right? And so that's like a microcosm of the macrocosm, going back to the mental rumination and how a lot of us are out in the world operating on autopilot. Why? Because we've never been properly loved. Why? Because we were reared and raised in lack-based consciousness. Why? Because the world taught us not to trust people, and we learned that at a young age as a means of protection, and we had to have it at that point. But now, not trusting people is creating walls all around us and limiting our upward mobility in the world. The amount of women online that are like this super anti-man conversation, and then the amount of men that are super anti-woman is just makes me so proud that I lived during a time where the internet was not a real thing. Because I'm so, I won't say because hopefully all of us who sort of fit that bill feel like that. But I can, with that wisdom plus kind of studying human nature, I can see how much of this shit is contrived. You guys are being programmed by an algorithm. To whom it may concern. And so feeding into that narrative, and there's again that frequency is just so strong in the social media world. And so this is like really critical in how we navigate, especially like if you're a single woman or a single man and you are looking to navigate your life partner, your soulmate, your equally yoked, right? However you want to look at it, your life partner, and you're trying to maintain a certain level of consciousness and frequency. You can't be watching this shit on these chicks on Instagram and reading the comments on the celebrity videos where some rapper cheated on his girlfriend, or she's out here twerking for Birkin bags, or you know what I mean, and you're reading and taking in this mindset and mentality that all men cheat or all men are dogs or dot all the things, right? Like the other video, all these women don't want a man unless they got more than $1 million. Like, these are grown men sitting on a panel talking like this, right? And so if you are feeding into that state of consciousness, then you are pushing a potential mate that is locked in with you and aligned with what you really want, what your soul really desires, the true authentic you, not the one with the mask, not the one who's thinking these hoes ain't loyal. All men are the same, right? All men are dogs, right? All of the things, right? So the mask is willing to accept those things because it's easier. Hardening of the heart. So if the goal is to attract, a life partner or a sort of high quality of love, in a man or in a woman, then you have to be careful about what you are talking about with your friends, the type of stories and situations you're internalizing, the type of content you're watching online, because the spiritual aspect of this is that you really truly can have whatever you desire. If you are so steeped in low self-esteem for whatever reasons, there's 1,000 reasons why we end up with low self-esteem, right? And it's usually based around the world and how the world has treated us or mishandled us, right? Or not. But you're operating out in the world and operating in the world with a lack of trust in the opposite sex, then you are going to continue to meet and to connect with people of the opposite sex that embody that same frequency. And what it really is a self-worth thing. And it's like, okay, well, that sounds good, but how do I change that? How do I stop that? First of all, spend some time alone. We don't always have to be in relationships. We don't always have to be seeking someone to fill the void. And I know for sure this applies to a lot of females, a lot of women that I've worked with, that I've talked to, that I have, experiences that I've seen in my lifetime, and even at myself at certain points. Sometimes we just need to be alone, because sometimes, there is not sometimes, consistently, a lot of the issues that we have in relationships as women, how we engage with men, we are just as equal to blame and responsible for all the reasons it didn't work, for all the reasons he felt insecure, for all of the triggering and trauma that happened to him. Like the same way you have a story and we have a story, they have a story too. And we're all sort of navigating and doing this dance and trying to figure it out. But that's one of the reasons I really have a problem with all of the anti-male sentiment right now, because women are just as responsible for the condition that humanity is in. That is an absolute fact. Now, you can say what happened at the hands of men. You can say men being in control. We can outline, I'm a historian. I know I know absolutely we can pinpoint the choices and decisions of a continuous, lineage and line of men who have done dot dot dot, right? But at the same time, there was a time preceding what we consider a patriarchal time where the world was specifically matriarchal, right? And matrilineal in terms of the power dynamic, and even in terms of the religious and spiritual dynamics. Women, the woman, the divine feminine sat at the top of the pyramid, if you will, in terms of that dynamic in all ancient kingdoms, all ancient societies. So we shifted from that particular timeline and that state of consciousness into the one that we're in now, in the same way that we shifted from being a predominant black and melanated and dark skinned numerous tribes all over the world from different parts of the world, right? We shifted from that into being now under the control and under the guise of capitalism and racism, white supremacy, right? At a time we were navigating without limitations. We weren't paying people taxes to come from Africa to the Americas, right? We were, trading and bartering with different nations throughout Africa. Europeans weren't taxing us for every move that we were making. We just talked about digital IDs, right? Such things weren't even a consideration, right? And so we shifted from that now to the timeline we're in now, where like doing business in China and being mindful of tariffs is and how that's navigating and fluctuating, and shipping costs, how it's navigating and fluctuating, is something I have to stay abreast with consistently. And of course, these are the semantics of business, but I'm just saying situational awareness. I foresee, I mentioned in a video before, I was on a boat cruise here in the Long Beach area, and it was a beautiful sunset cruise. A friend of mine's father, it was his birthday. And I was looking at, because we were on the water, and so, what do you call them? Oh, it's on the tip of my tongue. The containers, the shipping containers that are at the ports. They look big from, from afar, but then when you're close to them, like I was close to them when we were on the boat driving past these boats that are holding these containers, they are huge. And not only are the shipping containers huge, which obviously is bringing goods and products from all over the world to America and vice versa, but the ships that are carrying the containers are like the size of football fields. And in my mind, I was thinking, I wonder what African or predominantly Black or melanated nation around the world is in a position in terms of the maritime law aspect of shipping and receiving around the world and how this thing is operating in real time, in a position to like connect all of the African melanated indigenous people around the world and start you know some method of trading and shipping amongst ourselves. And yes, it's a big ask, yes, it's a big question, but shouldn't the question be asked? This is the way we have to start thinking, because the thought process is what starts generating the motion and the energy. And the next thing we know, something is popping off. The stakes are high. So that's the macrocosm, bringing this back down to a microcosm right now. I saw a video of Gary V, where he said, by the way, shout out to everybody. I did the experiment with the videos, right? I've done like two sort of metaphysics, spiritual videos back to back, and then I put up, and then one of the videos I put up the same day as the Jay-Z video. I did it intentionally. One was like calibrating the mind or something, and then it was the Hollywood, the finality, Jay-Z. And so the one that is powerful and laced with jewels, and just me like speaking to, you know, the mind and the spirit to try to like raise the vibration. I think it's at like 450 views now. And then the Jay-Z video is at like 2.2 thousand views now. And I don't care about the numbers, but I'm looking at that and acknowledging that to understand how the algorithm is programming and how the algorithm is working. And it can only work if people are adhering to the programming. So intention and interest, not just intention, but interest. Listening to something, soaking in the information, soaking in the, you ever watch a hood fight, world star videos where somebody is getting physically assaulted or something, and like you go from just sitting back like, oh wow, what's this, to now all of a sudden you're clenching your jaws and your body is like, you know what I mean, and you can feel the blows when they get hit, and somebody get kicked in the stomach and you're like having a physical reaction. I mean, that's some powerful shit. So then you get used to it and numb to it because you're watching it all the time. And you get used to and numb to men and women disrespecting one another, and not being able to have a baseline of respect in order to build proper levels of respect. We get used to that. We get used to abandoning ourselves and neglecting ourselves, especially as women, because it's par for the course. And then we go to the other extreme of the pendulum, and want to try to outdo men. So the point that I was making about the matriarchal and the matrilineal that preceded the patriarchal situation that we're in now, the goal is not to get back to the purely matrilineal, matriarchal frequency. The goal is to get back to a time and space where the matriarchal and patriarchal, and mind you, I don't even really use those words. That's not my language, but I'm using it because that will give everybody a perspective on what I mean. Because it's not just woman dominated versus man dominated. There's levels to it, right? So the matriarchal and the patriarchal is just to embody a time when women, matriarchal, meaning women were the point of emphasis when it came to the governance of society. And now in patriarchy, we can absolutely see, I mean, do we even need to make that point? Anywhere in any, even whether it's religious, whether it's political, whether it's government, whether it's education, all the different facets of society are 1000% predominantly run by men in every nation around the world, including Africa, including the highly melanated cultures around the world. And that's not to say that we don't still have ancient indigenous cultures that are still revering and uplifting the women, but nothing to the extent of what it was. And this is why a lot of us are quote unquote cursed. That passage in the Bible that talks about we being a cursed people, well, I don't accept that as a reality. But I do accept that as, if you accept that as a reality, which I think a lot of us around the world have, then yes, it is. The word is a living word. And the behavior reflects the word. So, we write history in advance, so they foresaw this coming and they put it in the book because they knew this was where humanity was heading. And now we're here. So getting back into a timeline where the quote unquote, again, don't get snagged on the words and send me a synopsis of where my matriarchy and where patriarchy started. Like, we should be past that. A balance and cohesion in the rulership, the self-governance of the matriarchal and the patriarchal, the masculine and the feminine, the woman and the man, the female and the male. That's why there is such a cataclysmic energy right now into moving humanity away from the beauty and the essence and the power and the responsibility of the man and woman. So what's the solution? Be more woman, be more man. All this ain't rocket science. But to that point, Gary Vee said in the video, and by the way, you guys, I announced this at the beginning. Let me just remind you, I have a group that I just launched called Climbing the Ladder of Yourself. It's a once-a-month group workshop where we meet and talk about climbing the ladder of ourselves, everything that we're talking about here. I set the price at a very low rate so that this can be something that I can pull some brilliant minds and souls together without having to be a financial burden. And so we can come together and think about it and talk about it and work through it. There's the link is in the description for that information if you want to sign up. We had our introductory meeting today. We have our first official meeting on March 8th at 12 o'clock p.m. So there's only going to be limited space. Once we hit the number that I'm the max number of participants, then I'm going to close that out or close that off like it's a door. And then I'm going to, the link won't work anymore, but I will keep you guys posted for future references, for future workshops. Also, I accept all love in the form of super chats, in the form of Cash App, because, it's all about reciprocity. And the reciprocity in, like I said, when I do these videos and even when I have my meetings and the work that I do when I work in consultations is that it's always feeding me. It's always transforming me. It's always benefiting me and adding value to me. That these beautiful souls entrust me in a certain regard, but then also that God has given me a gift to help people to see the God in themselves. And I don't say that in any kind of like, that's not a flex, that's not an arrogant posture or anything. It's a very humbling experience because I have to, my responsibility in order to be able to wear those big shoes is that I have to see the God in myself. It's a prerequisite. Which means if I see the God in myself, then that means that I have a higher level of accountability and responsibility to stay on my square. The higher you go up the pyramid, the rules of engagement change. So that's why I said the stakes are high. And the level of the stakes for people listening to this are going to be different based on 85, 10, 5, and then 5% of the 5. That's hard talk and tough talk for the average person. But for those of us who are conscientious and aware of the times right now, it sounds about right. The Gary Vee video, he was talking about analog is about to explode. Analog meaning records, meaning CDs, meaning books, meaning physical products, meaning things that we have now become accustomed to using in the digital realm that were at once specifically used in physical capacity, Walkmans and things like that, right? I've been continuously just fascinated by vinyl and that whole industry right there. I think that's a great industry and marketing tool, and you could build a lot of different businesses around vinyl records, cafes, and have listening stations, and just there's so many things you can do with that. But so I'm an analog girl in the digital world, right? So for me, and of course with books, and in the video he had a book in his hand and was like, get a book, it was this little funny skit piece to it. But it let me know, because again, I've been like stressed and strained and trying to find a way to break through with my books and in the publishing industry and kind of go global with this. Um, it reminded me like, yeah, bro, I'm on time. I don't have to start creating a body of work in 2026, because I see now that the analog world is about to explode, and real physical books are about to be a thing again, and real physical products. Yeah, I don't have to get ready. I'm already ready. That's a powerful and a beautiful thing. And then the flip side, or the supplement to that, is that, yeah, on a physical production, passionate creativity level, yes. Now, because again, the stakes are high, so now I have to rise up to the occasion mentally, spiritually, and emotionally, to the quality of product that I've produced, to the intention of the work in terms of the things that I've produced, into the mentality of I'm going to thrive in this world in spite of dot dot dot, right? Because that's what we are, right? In spite of what's happening in Cuba, in spite of what's happening in the Middle East, in spite of what's happening in certain parts of Africa, in spite of what's happening in America right now, in spite of all the other things, right? The focus is still to thrive, right? Okay, well, I got to get my spiritual muscle ready for that. I got to get my mental muscle ready for that. I got to get my emotional muscle ready for that. I got to get my physical body, my internal body, and my external body ready for that. So we identified in our conversation today, based on my Change Your Mind from Lack to Abundance workbook, which if you join this program, you will get a complimentary copy of that. It'll be the ebook version, and we're all going to be working through this workbook together in the duration of this program. But in it, I have a worksheet page where it talks about these 10 different aspects of life, and like, everything on the full spectrum of our life experience. And I had everybody pick the one that was most important. Fill it out first. Okay, you filled all of them out. Okay, now pick the one that's the most important. And so now we are honing in on the fear, or the lack-based consciousness, or the, what's the blockage, because a lot of times we can't even pitch the great idea. Like you talking to God right now, or you're talking to an investor that's ready to put some money in your pocket, or just ready to put some money in anybody's pocket. They feeling good and philanthropic and just hit the lottery or whatever. Like, there's a blessing at your door right now that will give you exactly what you want. Tell me what it is. Most people don't even know. So that process that we do through those worksheets is like, okay, first time around, tell me what it is. Okay, yeah, that sounds kind of gray and neutral. You know, that's what I expect, like 75-80% of people to say. All right, let's get at a little bit of color. First of all, why didn't you speak emphatically? Why aren't you like passionate about it? Why isn't it colorful? Why isn't it vivid? Why don't I feel soul in this request? Well, I grew up in poverty, or I struggle with finding love and believing in love because of dot dot dot, right? Okay, so now we gotta peel back the layers of that, not in a deep, oh my God, we need therapy for 10 years type of way. But in the bigger scheme of things, we all just really want love and peace of mind and clarity and to live a good life. And so we stumbled upon the way. Um, Analog is about to explode. So this is the time for the creatives, for the business explorers, for the people who really want to recommit to, like the whole pandemic thing and standing 6 feet apart and people not being able to leave their homes and not being able to socialize. And I think the level has been upped from just like clubbing down to having experiences. And this is why I push back on my book tour and traveling, because I want to do a different type of experience when I go on tour again. I don't want it to just be people coming to see me do a lecture and sit in a chair and, you know what I mean, intermission. You come back like, yeah, I wanted, that's a part of it, but I also want to add some texture and some depth and some culture to those experiences. So you gotta have money to do those things. Everything costs when you are self funded and putting everything together. So I just gotta kind of put the cart before the horse, or not put the cart before the horse. But that's definitely a focus of mine when I am traveling the country. I'm going to be doing more um, more textured, different types of experiences that are more like, soul stirring and a little bit deep. I could get more into it, but I don't want to put my ideas out there, and the next thing you know, somebody popping up with my ideas. It wouldn't be the first time for sure. Um, but that's just a side note for those of us who get anxiety for having to deal with social media, or gotta make reels to do this. And like, nah, I think there are marketing tools and things that are like, a little old school that you can go back to. Like I'm going back to guerrilla marketing with my advertising plan, and I can say that publicly because I'm not worried about anybody like stealing that idea. That's not my idea. That used to be a staple in business, right? And so guerrilla marketing just meaning sending out flyers or brochures or things physical to a person, because the mail, anyway, I'm not going to get into all of that. That's just a little jewel for somebody that might benefit from that. Something that I'm definitely applying in my business, going back to the analog, old school sort of ways of doing business. I also read this passage that said, "He who loves is the most powerful." I thought that was powerful. He who loves is the most powerful. And yes, our wives or husbands, yes, our partner in relationships, yes, our children, yes, our parents, yes, our grandparents, right? Yes, our family dynamic, yes, our community, yes, our culture, but also like self, right? Like he who loves self is the most powerful, because if you really truly love yourself, then you are out operating in the world, leaving a different sort of energetic imprint on the minds and hearts and souls of people, and the whole nature, you know, uh, uh, living organism experience that's happening on our planet all the time, which is we're highly interactive with. No, it's not us versus them. Like, oh, the birds and the bees and the trees out there. Like, nah, it's us, the humans and the birds and the bees and the trees out here together, feeding off each other, feeding each other, taking care of each other, abandoning each other, all the things. But it's not us versus them. That's the European mindset. It's all of us in cohesion. At least it should be. So he who loves self is the most powerful. And then we can also remix that, because that's two different ways now, talking about who we love in our personal capacity. But then he who loves self, right, which is the key to loving any and everything, right? And then he who loves his work or his creativity or his writing or his skill set or his gift or his talent or his contribution or his buildings or his businesses or his track record of helping other people or his inventions or his ability to speak life into people, or his ability to create fantastic works of art, or his ability to write a poem that will snatch a person's soul. You ever heard a poem that snatched your soul? Oof. The way that words can be used, that's why I love words. That's why I'm a writer. I need to get back in my poetry bag, but I have to turn on a different department in my mind for that. But I love poetry as an art form. And if a person can put the right words in the right spaces and make them rhyme and not overload the sentences and just say it in the right way and speak to your mind and to your heart where it gives you shivers, where it rocks you to your core, that's some godly shit to me. I'm just saying. If you've been in a poetry house, we used to Dwayne from oh god, Tony Tone was from Oakland, and he owned a poetry slash coffee spot in Oakland, right off of I think it was Grand, right? Grand or Lakeshore. It was Grand, right by Lake Mary, and so it used to be the poetry sessions up there used to be popping. Not to mention Deaf Poetry Jam, and this is one of those things that say black people don't have no culture. I beg your pardon. That's one of our greatest, most significant representations of black culture is our poetry slams. You know what I mean? Like all the things I'm talking about, black people in America. I know we don't own poetry, but we definitely have taken that shit to a whole nother level. It's just a fact. That is a representation of doing something that you love and being able to represent a level of power, a level of class, a level of excellence, a level of beauty. One of my things that I love is architecture. I know either in a past lifetime or something that I'm meant to do in this lifetime, I have a very strong calling and yearning. That's why I went to school, Academy of Art University. I did 3 years. I didn't get my degree, but I put in 3 years and then ended up shifting gears and going to Atlanta and doing radio and blah, blah, blah. But I have a very strong passion and drive for development, land development. And I've been dibbling and dabbling with it over the course of my life. So I already know, like, as soon as my money hits, that's one of the ways that God has already shown me will be lucrative and will be necessary in this timeline. And when the time comes for me to do that, I have the courage and conviction to walk into it because I've already been giving it time and energy and thought and focus for a long time now, probably the equivalent of like 6 or 7 years in my lifetime if I add everything up, owning and fixing up properties and owning property out of town and the time that I spent in school and the time that I spent like paying attention to what was going on in the real estate industry and when it bottomed out and flopped and all of these things, like, yeah, I got skin in the game. So this is another level of putting skin in the game on something you love. It doesn't always have to be transactional out the door. This is where I slipped on a banana peel with my textbook, is that I got too in the transactional mindset and I fell out of the love frequency that I had when I was creating it. When I had to do that sharp turn from creative to business, I was exhausted by then. And all the creatives know exactly what I'm talking about. So find something to love. Who do you love? What do you love? And do you actually really truly love yourself? Feeling threatened by life, that thing that Neville Goddard said that stuck with me. A lot of us are walking on eggshells. I know because I recognize myself in different points, in different patterns, walking on eggshells. Scared that my biggest fear, I think, is that I won't live up to my potential. Like I have this strong nagging yearning always in the back of my head, always in the like, you know what I mean? Like you're not doing enough. You could be doing so much more. You could have done so much more. All of the things, right? That's that masculine energy of having to parent myself from the and purpose, the energy my father was supposed to be giving me at different points. I had to develop those attributes in order to see myself through living in a war zone in Oakland and navigating the streets and dealing with all the attention I was getting from boys and men. A lot of attention from men at 14, 15 years old. And so I had to develop certain characteristics that were heavy in the masculine energy in order to protect myself mentally, spiritually, and emotionally, so that I didn't have to protect myself physically. Now that's a science and another level of alchemy that we as women aren't talking about enough, because we're stuck in the we hate men frequency instead of rising up into the we love God frequency, which is a reflection of self. And so we get snagged. And so we lose our power. He who loves is the most powerful. Well, if we're loving everybody, how are we not the most powerful as women? Because we don't really love ourselves. And that ain't no modern feminist. Y'all can miss me with all of that shit. Everybody who watches my content know I ride just as hard, if not harder, on myself and women, because I hold us accountable for, you know what I mean? The same way I said I'm gonna do a video, and I am gonna do the video. I could have did it tonight, but I'm already at an hour talking now. I don't know, maybe I will. We'll see. But the video about the dudes, all the dudes who were like, anyway, the counter to that is the video of the female who, I don't even know if this chick was AI. I gotta say, but every day of the week she's like changing her clothes. It's a real quick shot. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So she got on outfit, change the outfit, change the outfit, right? And she's like, I went every day this week trying to be nice to a man. And every day this week it didn't work. So from Monday to Sunday, she put in extra effort to be nice to a man, any random man in her that comes in contact with her, and she was unsuccessful every single time. I'm going to do a video to it because I just cannot. These people have humanity operating at such a low vibration and a low level of consciousness. Mind you, again, your electromagnetic field, your energetic resonance, your mentality, your expectations, your situational awareness, your perspective, your ability to love yourself, your ability to check yourself, self-awareness. Oh my God. This is a superpower for me. I have such a keen sense of self-awareness, and it's something that I alchemized in the experience of growing up, walking on eggshells in different households. Not, being in the comfort and safety of my home with my mother and father, my parents, or either or, always having to navigate different environments in my family. So I had to be super keen on how people were thinking and feeling as a child. And I got good at it. So now it's a superpower. So it took, again, that's why I always say I'm an alchemist. It took a situation that could be considered difficult and adversity and darkness and, all the things which would be relative. But I transmuted that shit and alchemized that shit where I can sit here and talk with you and be as fervent and adamant about what I'm saying. And I know you're going to feel it and resonate with the truth in it, because it's the truth of my life. But this superpower now that those of us who have been able to transmute and alchemize the life experiences in 2026 in a timeline where Satan has come from behind the curtain. And so the warriors of the Most High, or the warriors for love, or the warriors for common sense, intellectualism, like I said at the event I did yesterday, I was part of a beautiful event at La Brea Tar Pits Museum. And we did a panel discussion about books and about the publishing industry. And I just have to remind myself when I'm out in the public and I'm engaging with people, like, my people love me so much. There is so much love in the world for me, y'all. I have to say it, because I, get turned up a lot when I'm in these internet streets and people talking greasy and whatever. But like, man, I get so much love when I'm out in the world. And when I was on stage, it just, everything I said just flowed so smoothly. It's just like I kick into a different gear when I'm doing that. which again goes back to he who loves is the most powerful. That's something that I love to do. So feeling threatened by life, walking on eggshells. If you find yourself walking on eggshells in any particular area of your life and your consciousness, you got to deal with that shit. We can't avoid it anymore. You got to deal with it. Whether it's therapy, whether it's fasting, whether it's fine tuning the type of content you do, turning social media off completely, whether it's stopping drinking, whether it's stopping smoking, whether it's stopping porn, whether it's, you know, you got daddy issues and so you keep running into the same nigga over and over again, whether it's you got mommy issues and so you declared war on all women online and in real life and in real time, whatever it is. That's why that self-awareness thing is critical, it's key. I've been through a masterclass of self-awareness in this 2 years. Shit that I didn't even know I was still capable in my mind and in the way that I was like moving in the world or perceiving things. I've had to come face to face with it. And I don't want to be her anymore. I had to create her in order to survive. In order to not be a target for certain type of energy and, you know, all the things. In order to not walk out into the world and be an enemy of men because I, you know, didn't get enough love and lap time in my childhood. Because that's what a lot of these females are out here doing. Hemorrhaging pain. And the men are doing it too. So it's, you know, I'm equal opportunity. There's no gender wars here. I will hold all of our asses to the fire equally and consistently. So, looking at my notes, making sure I said everything I wanted to say. Feeling threatened by life and then contextualizing that with the concept of racism, white supremacy, and the majority of people on this planet, melanated, dark skin, African, indigenous, all of the things, natives, right, are walking around on our planet feeling threatened by the system of racism, white supremacy, thereby empowering it. It's the only way the shit can exist. So this is a spiritual war. This is a mental war. This is an emotional war. As above, so within, you know, the higher self, the lower nature, all of those things are applicable right now. I really, really, really need us to put some pep in our step. And I ain't talking about pounding the pavement. I'm tall, so I walk fast, right? So it's always the thing for me I have to be mindful of when I'm with the people, you know, unless there's somebody else that walks fast. But so I don't just mean like pounding the pavement. I mean, put some pep in your step in taking care of yourself. Put some pep in your step in letting that dude or that chick go. Put some pep in your step in terms of starting your business. Put some pep in your step in terms of checking your mind, the rumination, the hamster wheel, the self-sabotage, the patterns, the bullshit, the fuckery of you, just like the fuckery of me. Put some pep in our step in terms of cleaning up that static and that those energy links. I will, considering the nature of this conversation and how I feel from the experience, let's say today is officially, well, it'll be Monday by the time you guys watch this video. So let's say for the whole day of Monday, February 23rd, if you want to sign up for a one-on-one consultation, I will open my calendar up for 50% off. My normal hourly rate is $150 for today only, meaning Monday, February 23rd. I'm going to open my calendar up if somebody wants to talk to me in a one-on-one capacity for 60 minutes. Today is the day to do so. I've been running these specials a little bit more because I've been having a lot of really successful and empowering conversations as of late, and so it's reminding me how beneficial that part of my work is for other people, but as well as for myself. And so 50% off, but only for today. If you see this after Monday, February 23rd, that deal is no longer relative, and this payment can only be made by Cash App. So $75, 1 hour consultation. That's a phone call or a video conversation you can choose, and we can talk about whatever you want to talk about and help you to alchemize and transmute that particular situation. So $75, my Cash App information will be in the description. Climbing the Ladder of Yourself 120-day program for men and women is available, live and available. Our next meeting is March 8th, 2026. And I'm saying this right as my camera has dropped out again. Okay, there we go. So that's it. You can also show love by super stickers, super chats. Cash App information is in the description as well, because reciprocity is a beautiful thing, and that's the name of the game in 2026 moving forward. As always, I have all of my books, my textbook, Ancient People with Social Studies and History textbook, my most recent work of art. I have 4 metaphysics workbooks, Change Your Mind from Lack to Abundance, Keys to Womanhood, what every young lady and woman should know, The Science of Self and The Science of Sex. And then I have my first 2 books, Black Matters, Volume 1 and 2. The information will be in the description to access all of that, as well as some of my other merchandise as well. Thank you so much for your time, energy, and attention. I will see you beautiful people very soon. Peace and love.